Hey, what's up, everybody? This is K Study QB, and we are the Political Junkies, and we got a special guest, Johnny. How you pronounce your last name, Johnny? I should have asked you before the show.
Give it a shot.
Axam.
That's right. Just
okay.
Cat. Axam.
Okay, there you go. There you go. And I came across Johnny. I like to ask people for feedback when it comes to the mutual aid political party. Now, I don't want to just jump into anything and unorganized. I try to get as much feedback from various different people, and Johnny was one of the people that I was able to get some feedback and hopefully get some help with structuring the 501c4 side of things if possible. But I was talking to Johnny, and I'm like, this guy is a very animated, charismatic kind of guy. I was like, you know what? One of these days, I'm gonna bring him on to the show, and we'll introduce him to my man David and Day, and to the audience, and we're going to have fun. We're going to see what happens. Johnny, talk to the people for me.
Well, what's up? I mean, I saw you on a podcast. I mean, I knew you on Twitter, of course, and, we'd interacted there. But I saw you talking about your mutual aid party on the podcast. And so I just thought, I DM'd you and reached out. Want to see what that's about, because I'm like an operations specialist, a business consultant. When you have an idea and you want to legalize it and everything, then there's steps you have to take, and then you have to build a back end, you have to build a communication platform, you have to, there's all these things outlining how you're going to treat your workers as a worker advocate. I get really involved in the democratization of the organization. A lot of these leftists are creating organizations with hierarchies and authoritarian structures, and they're just copying the same old capitalist corporate system. And they do it because they're conditioned to do so. And, there are frameworks for creating businesses. You hear this horizontal leadership. I don't really necessarily grasp that terminology, but there's a book by a man named Michael Alberts called No Bosses. And
No Bosses. I'm going to look that up because I'm very interested into horizontal leadership. But go ahead.
And that's what it's about. It's about creating a framework that, provides a democratic workspace, right? We live in an authoritarian society where when you go to work, it's 100% authoritarian. Your boss says what happens, this is what, and then we're told we live in a democracy. I spend a half of my life, because I sleep another third of it. So half of my waking life, I spend at least a half. It's probably more. I mean, people work in 12, 16-hour days, right? So how much of your life are you spending under authoritarianism constantly as an oppressed and repressed worker? And you're being told that you live in a democracy only because we have this illusion through our electoral system that you get to vote, and that turns into some kind of form of democracy. So when I see people on the left, especially when they're in the thralls of starting up, I really want to get to them right away, because it's like, listen, if you're going to do this, do it where you're demonstrating the principles you say you represent. But then how many of these organizations are nothing like that? There's an executive director, there's a CEO, there's this, there's that, there's organizations on the left that are created this way. And I'm like face palming myself, saying, why is this happening? Are you really socialists or not? Socialism is a democratized workforce. How can you not do that in your own organization and call yourself a socialist?
All right. See, we can really go off on that the whole show and talk about just that topic, because you definitely got my mind thinking about how I want to structure the mutual aid political party. And that's why I think the most powerful part of that is having teams. Instead of things being organized at the mutual aid political party level, I'd rather things be local, be as local as possible. That's what mutualism is all about. Go ahead, John.
Just to close this point out, leadership does not have to be constructed with authority, right? Leadership is guidance. It's teaching. It's as a head of a department, if you will, because you need the people that are project managers. That I'm an operations specialist. I see the entire umbrella of what has to happen and then work with those teams. But it's my job as a leader in the organization to provide them with all the tools they need and any backup if they need help, resources, whatever, making sure that they're able to communicate with each other and that they're not being, restricted from any other departments or anything like that. That's my job as a project manager. It's not to tell them, hey, you need to do this. And along with that, it also removes that false responsibility from my shoulders that, well, you're the project manager. Why didn't your team member do what, because he got sick, he didn't show up, he didn't finish his task, and now it's all on my shoulders because I'm the project manager, right? So this whole authoritarian system breaks down the kind of community sense that we want to build.
Man, we can talk about this all day, but let's get on with the show. Let my other guys have a chance to jump in here. How you doing, David?
Good. I'm doing well. I got my text message earlier today that my mayor ballot is in the mail, so that's gonna be arriving soon. So I'm very excited about that.
We got to talk about that real quick. Because you got a mail-in ballot, right? You got a mail-in ballot, and then you filled it out, and you send it back. Now
you're getting dozens of drop boxes around the city and the state. So
So you're getting a text. Would you get that text message if you dropped it off at a mailbox also?
Yeah, so
probably,
I got the text message that the ballot was in the mail coming to me today. The election is April 4th, so the ballot is in the mail to me. So I've got 3 weeks to fill it out, and then I can drop it off at one of the I think there's dozens of ballot drop-off boxes in the city, and then several hundred around the state that you can just drop it off. Then you get a text message once it's been picked up, and then you get a text message once it's been counted. And so it's amazing. Yeah. So it's great. And so, so I'm in Denver, this is in Colorado. And so, and so then, so I got,
because I heard that in California, they do something similar. See, in my mind, I think that this should be the primary way of voting is you get a ballot to your house, and then a secondary way would be you still need polling stations, I think, for special circumstances, right?
And I know we do have polling stations too.
Now, to play devil's advocate, I know there are people who are skeptical of mail-in votes and the chain of custody and all those different things. But like you said, I think of FedEx, you could track your package along the way. And then, like you said, that's exactly my vision would be to get text messages. By the way, I want to give a shout out to PJ Holly in the chat. Much love to you. But yeah, as it goes along the chain, you get prompts, and especially the most important one is it was received, so you know for a fact that it's going to be counted on the day of the election. So I'm hoping that unless somebody proves me wrong, it looks like it's going well over there in Colorado.
So far, today's the first day that they were mailed out.
So we'll see.
So good.
Dave, before I forget, I want to give a shout out to Kimberly. We don't have any female and feminine energy today this week because Kimberly is not with us because it's her birthday. Happy birthday, Kimberly. Much love to you. And I hope you have a great and wonderful day. Also, Sabby Sab, who was our guest last week, her birthday was this past week as well. So I want to give her, Sabby Sabs, a shout out. Happy birthday. Dave, before we get the show started, what's going on, my man?
Oh, I'm grateful to be here. Super excited to meet you, Johnny. And I'm always, one of my radical takes that will soon probably be on the podcast is that I think Denver should be the new DC, because I think the way that Colorado operates and how they treat their citizens is a lot better than how most states do, whether it comes to voter education, when it comes to the efficiency of their voting system. They just have the institutional memory of what citizenship is like in a way that unfortunately many states don't. And I think that's intentional. So I'm a big advocate for how Colorado does things, but I don't live there. I live in Virginia. So
I was gonna say, Day knows about these too, but I got this in the mail the other day too. About my ballot information booklet that comes out that goes to every registered voter too. So any ballot issue or there's like arguments for and against it, and it talks about how it affects your tax rate, if at all, and it's great.
Nice. So, now the next step would be having some kind of public access video channel, but it would have to be on demand. So let's say they have a YouTube channel where somebody can actually articulate what's in the package. So instead of just reading through a booklet, maybe you can hear both sides. Before
there are both sides in there, and then they also offer translation services that you can call through the Secretary of State.
Cool.
That's great.
Cool. So in honor of Johnny, or maybe it just happened to coincide with this, where we was talking about workers and and democracy in the workplace, I want to go to this first clip, which is going to discuss Starbucks, who they're trying to unionize. Their workers are trying to unionize, and let's go to this first clip.
Starbucks must reinstate employees at Buffalo area stores after a judge ruled the company displayed, quote, egregious and widespread misconduct for firing employees who were simply trying to unionize. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich spoke with some of the workers who were impacted. Watch.
How is it for you being here today?
Every time I come to this store, and it's only been about 4 times since I've been fired, it's been very emotional.
On April 1st last year, Angel Krempa was fired from her barista job at this Starbucks in Buffalo, New York. Starbucks says she was fired for violating the company's policies. Krempa says it was retaliation. Why do you think you were fired?
I think that they illegally fired me because I was leading the union effort at this store.
Last week, a judge agreed. In a 218-page ruling, a National Labor Relations Board judge said Starbucks displayed, quote, egregious and widespread misconduct to employees unionizing at 21 locations in the Buffalo area. Several workers, including Krempa, must be reinstated according to the judge's order. Do you want to go back and work here again?
I would love to come back and work here again. It's the best job that I ever had.
Starbucks said the order is inappropriate and are considering all options to obtain further legal review. Since the success of the first union in Buffalo in 2021, there are now 280 unionized stores across the U.S. To date, Starbucks Workers United says it's filed 600 charges against the coffee giant for alleged federal labor violations and illegal firings. And Starbucks has filed nearly 100 unfair labor practice charges against the union for failing to bargain in good faith. Howard Schultz, who is leading the company until he steps down in April, spoke to Poppy Harlow last month.
If a de minimis group of people, which now is about 300 stores, file for a petition to be unionized, they have a right to do so. But we as a company have a right also to say we have a different vision that is better, more dynamic, and we have a history to prove it.
But Starbucks barista Michelle Eisen and shift supervisor Gianna Reeve disagreed. They were some of the first employees to organize, calling for a seat at the table.
So I wanted to interrupt at the end of Howard Schultz talking, and much love to the gentleman in the chat. Much love to you, buddy. In that same interview, because I watched the whole interview, his excuse for not meeting with SB United, Workers United, which is the union they're trying to organize with, was because they did not want to meet in person. They were trying to meet on Zoom, like everybody, like what they did during the COVID pandemic. You know, Starbucks themselves, they met on Zoom, and because they didn't. And I don't know exactly the reason why they can't do it through Zoom. Maybe at some point they will do it in person. I think maybe they don't have the money to fly to Seattle. Maybe that's what it is or whatever. But he was trying to use that as the sole excuse why he didn't want to meet. But I'm looking forward to when Bernie Sanders has called him to do a hearing. So I'm looking forward to that. The love always, much love to you as well. So I'm going to go to David shortly, but I'm going to play some more of the clip.
To have a say in health and safety policies, seniority pay, and staffing levels.
I do think it was the only way to make our voice heard.
Both women say they were retaliated against for union organizing.
I remember days of just nonstop surveillance on the floor, retaliation where I would no longer be given shift supervisor positions in my location.
Why stay?
I was presented with this option of working from the inside with my coworkers to make this company a better place, to be a part of building the policies and the safety procedures that would protect me.
And now Starbucks must compensate Reeve and Eisen for lost wages, according to the judge's order.
It's a very turbulent thing in your mind.
For Krempa, she was out of a job for 6 months after she was fired by the company. She says she almost lost her home and went into debt. A return to Starbucks, the highest paying job she's had, would help her get back on her feet.
How will you feel if you get that opportunity to step back in there, put on your apron, and start being a Starbucks employee again?
My aprons are still hanging in the same spot that they were left in on April 1st of last year, waiting for me to put them back on, and I'm ready to take it off that hook and put it back on and walk in and just smile at my coworkers and be like, I'm back, I'm here, like we did it.
All right, I'm gonna stop it there, but I'm hoping because of the MLRB ruling in their favor, she will get all the money that she's owed from the time they stopped her from working to presently. So, David, let me go to you first, buddy.
Oh, I have so much to say. I was a former Starbucks manager, so technically I was a corporate employee from 2014 to 2016. The real gag is that like our district meetings, our district conference calls, they were conference calls like before the pandemic was even a thing. So I'm like, Starbucks has the technology to be able to meet virtually. And I was like, I also like, so that's the thing. So it's like my store that I ran, we were encouraged to schedule people like previously before I joined the company, it was much more worker friendly. And then they started changing to these software scheduling on demand scheduling systems where the software would schedule people for about 4.5 to 5 hour shifts, maybe 4 or 5 days a week, depending upon their availability. So you had to have open availability. And so the goal was to try to schedule people around 20 hours a week or so if they needed benefits, because at Starbucks, they offered benefits to people who worked 20 hours a week or more, which honestly, that is something that I really do admire about the company still to this day. But the other thing is we had these like staffing graphs or like that we had to like work within for scheduling. Our staffing levels had to be at 150% for the store. So a lot of times I had people who would get like 8 or 9 hours a week, but they had to be available in order to like meet these thresholds. And so then if somebody were to call out at that point, they didn't have like sick pay or anything like that. They did have, it depended on the like your tenure with the company, if you had some PTO, but it wasn't a whole lot. And then the other thing is when I was there, baristas were making $8.25 to $9 an hour. But the thing is too, with my store's profitability alone, just my store, and we didn't even have a drive-through. We were like a cafe only store. The drive-through stores are even more profitable because the way that you can staff them and the transaction levels and all this stuff. But like the way our profit and loss was structured after everything and everyone was paid, we were also only allocated like 400 hours a week to run a store that was, we had to have staff from 5 a.m. till about 11 p.m. almost every night of the week. 40 of those hours were mine. So it was like 360 hours. Yes. And so after everything was said and done, inventory was accounted for, all of this stuff, and the profit that we gave back to the company on average every month, we could have paid the baristas and the shift supervisors an additional $16 an hour more back in 2014 to 2016. So I'm like, don't tell me that they don't have the money. And like what these baristas are asking for is not much. I see how hard they work. I see how like they burn themselves on 200-degree coffee, but the company doesn't want to like, but you're encouraged to like, just sweep it all under the rug because Howard Schultz needs another billion. Like, that's what I've got to say about that.
Yeah, it's terrible that they always their fiduciary agreement to their shareholders is they have to create as much profit as possible. So even if it's a nickel more, like it's crazy. Let me go you, Day.
It just reminds me that I think that the fiduciary responsibility, when we started implementing that the way that we did, I truly believe was one of the worst moments. Yeah. To me, there's a clear schism when it comes to the worker corporate relationship at that moment. But mine is a less substantive point and more of a question is like, who is your publicist? Like the one thing that Starbucks benefits, just like a few other companies, from having a positive brand. But a lot of that brand is associated because people, due to their love of Starbucks, tend to have a very good relationship with their local baristas, with their local store. And so the fact that you got on Al Green's internet and you actually said, hey, we want to make sure we don't want to reinstate these people that we've already been found were in the right. I don't think they understand just how much the public is actually at large in support of these Starbucks workers. And then even more importantly, they really have these Gen Zs and millennials messed up because a lot of them, these people that they hire they're very well educated. They tend to have gone to college. You're not going to play them as easily as somebody. They know that they have other options, generally speaking. And so the fact that they find their fulfillment in this and that they can try to manipulate using corporate speak that most people after the pandemic realize is bullcrap. I can't believe that Starbucks is still hanging to this. And it's going to be interesting to see if the workers wanted to, they really could have the power to completely drive their numbers and their good brand down by doing full-on corporate-wide walkouts and strikes, etc. And then you have to start talking about the substantive reasons of why these people refuse to fill people's coffee every morning, their number one drug. I would love to see Starbucks have to defend that when nobody wants to work there. That would be a big hit, in my opinion.
Johnny.
Yeah, so I like the part where he says, you know, we don't want to unionize because we have this long-standing proven model. It's so laughable, isn't it? If it was so long-standing and proven, then why the hell are your employees unionizing? And, you know, for the record, I'm an absolutist. I think the unions don't go far enough, right? I believe that the true shareholders should be the employees of the company. So they shouldn't even have investors on Wall Street owning shares of the company. It should be the people who are investing their time and energy into creating the products. And then back to David's point, the money that you're making, you see an equilibrium start happening when you're not profit incentivized, because the employees could be making another $10 an hour, and you could cut the cost of the product to the consumer by $3 a damn cup of coffee, right? Because I don't go to these places, just so you know. I'm truly a minimalist. I don't shop at Walmart. I don't go to Starbucks. I don't do any of that shit. If I'm starving and somebody throws me a McDonald's burger, I may eat it if I'm really starving. This has to be naked and afraid type starving. I'm not going to just eat it because I'm hungry right now. I mean, I'm that adverse to these corporations and the products that they pump out. However, as employment, I accept the fact that, you know, these are services. People want their coffee. They like their coffee. But to be charging people $9 a freaking cup of coffee and then only giving the employees less than 20 hours a week, they can't even take care of themselves, but they have to be available. You know, that kind of manipulation, not even knowing that you could take care of, you have to go get another second job. That's why there's so many jobs, because people got 3 and 4 jobs, you know? I mean, so it's ridiculous. I think it's funny that he says we've got a system, a proven system that works. Yeah, it works for you and the people, the investors. It doesn't work for the employees or the customers who are also workers.
So you know what we got to do, David, Johnny, Day, Holly Horn, PJ Holly, the Jammin' in the chat, and the Love Always. You know what we got to do?
What do we got to do?
Oh my God. So I didn't mean get beat up by the cops. That's what I did. I didn't mean that.
I was like, Chase, I think I know what you mean.
Protest?
Yeah. I meant protest, but I'm hoping that we're in a more democratic. Well, this is America. So first of all, I saw that Johnny, my man Johnny, shared this. So I want you to talk about this clip, Johnny, and let us know why you retweeted it.
Okay, so I saw this, you know, when I first started looking at it, I thought it was United States, right? Because of, you know, the 2020 protests. That's what things go like here. But it's actually in Paris, and of course they're protesting the rise of the retirement age, which we're also seeing, you know, people in our government push for. Of course, all these people are already over 80 and they're still serving, and they're like, you know, so young people working today shouldn't be retiring at 62 because the life expectancy is, you know, going to be 85 by the time they're old enough. So they should work till they're 72. You know, but anyway, that's why these people are protesting. And what's interesting is you see this all going on a lot in France, but I need to remind everybody, France is about the size of New York. Right. Okay. So when we talk about this this is a protest in a major city. It is a major world city, but it's in a country that's the size of one of our states. And so when we talk about getting mass movement on the streets, we're talking about 50 separate countries of different sizes and trying to mobilize people in this way against this kind of police state brutality in our own country.
Yeah, that brings up a good question. Do you think that it would be easier to organize if we did, like, because right now we're trying to organize nationally, if we just said, hey, let's focus on one state, let's see if we can force the governor to do something? Like, what you all think?
I think it depends. I'm thinking out loud, so I hope it makes sense. But I think when it comes to certain corporations, I mean, Starbucks proved and Amazon proved that it is possible to take it from a state by state thing. If you win it can be contagious. I still feel like there has to be some level of national solidarity or support for said people. I would love if it was possible to just do it on a massive scale, like the railroad workers, et cetera, if we could have really coordinated something, or the flight attendants and all of that. But if you, when in doubt of that, I say start with a region, the Northeast, or, start with places like New York, places where they're going to feel the impact. Like when I think of Starbucks, I'm like, that's the one brand most associated with the PMC. Like, don't piss. Those are the people who actually get politically agitated. So when those people in New York City can't get their fill up at 6 a.m. and then they won't show up to work pissed off at their boss and all of those things, we have an actual problem. Howard Schultz can't go to his little country club anymore because the people at the country club are pissed off that the other people aren't working. So.
Yeah. Let me give a shout out to Bruce Jackson in chat. Much love to you. And let me play another clip of protesting, and let's see how the solidarity is between the people who are getting inconvenienced by the protesting.
Protesters in Israel taking their days of disruption to Israel's main airport Wednesday for 10 weeks now. Tens of thousands coming out to the streets against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to weaken the judiciary and give Israeli politicians unprecedented power to overturn Supreme Court decisions. Passengers forced to drag their suitcases so as not to miss their flights. This man from France walking more than half a mile to the terminal, saying he understood the protesters' point of view.
I think it's when you are fighting for what is right, you need to fight and not violence.
Among the demonstrators, former fighter pilots who said they wouldn't heed the call to serve a government they believe is hurting democracy.
It's more important to have a free country than to catch a plane.
The protesters here at the airport slowing down traffic to the entrance, trying to disrupt not only Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's planned trip to Italy, but also affecting U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's arrival. The Pentagon saying Israeli officials asked the Defense Secretary's team to push back and alter his schedule instead of him meeting with officials in Tel Aviv. Instead, he's arriving here to this airport and immediately going to a complex right next to the airport, meeting with officials and then flying out.
All right, so I think that's good enough there. But basically, Netanyahu, who is their prime minister, is trying to gain more power. Is trying to consolidate more power to him by doing this judicial overhaul. And it's very good to see that the citizens of Israel are trying to protest that, and they're showing and it's been going on for a while. And it's good to see that the people are also have solidarity with them. The man had to walk a half a mile to the airport. I mean, I guess their airport is totally different than our airport. Like, we know we have to go 2 hours in advance, go through TSA, make sure that, everything is right with can't have a glass of water inside your bag and all that craziness. So I'm sure he don't have to deal with that craziness. Maybe he would be pissed off if he had to. I know I'm stressed out every time I go to the airport trying to make sure I get there ahead of time. But let me see. Let me go to you, Johnny. Talk to me about this.
I was just going to say, I live in Minnesota where Philando Castile was killed, and we had the eruption of the protest that blocked the highways in I-95 or I-35, I-94, all that up there. Major, Twin Cities highways were blocked, and it was on the news. And I live in rural Minnesota. I don't live in the cities. Okay, I live in PFE, Minnesota. And I live in Trump country. I live in a small 2,500 population town, and all of my neighbors are Trump, and I work for farmers and all this good stuff. And most of the consensus is among those people is, I would have just run those people over. Don't be blocking my way. I'm trying to get home from work. And they don't understand. This is what I tell people is a protest that doesn't disrupt other people's lives is just a parade. And the point of the protest, the point of blocking your traffic and coming home is that there are injustices going on in your community and you need to be a part of the solution. Otherwise you're part of the problem if you're just going by. And it's unfortunate. It's nice to see people standing up with people like that and understanding that the disruption is necessary to get the change. Because if all it is you standing there, I've been a part of those protests where you just stand there with a cardboard sign on the corner of Main Street and get people to honk at you. We will go. It just does nothing. It literally does nothing. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
No, 100%. Let me go today.
Yeah, I really love what you said there, Johnny, about how, the inconvenience that a protest must cause. And I said, hearing your neighbors' responses, it reminds me of just the concept of like how our rugged individualism has sort of morphed into rugged narcissism, and how everything is so focused and reflected on how does it impact me. And I think one of the most insidious things that has happened over the past 40, 50 years is the fact that our class solidarity has essentially dissipated. And the moment that happens, I think that's what gives our politicians the leeway to be able to essentially put blinders on when it comes to the pain and injustice of the constituents that they're sent there to serve. And I think until we start realizing that if it could happen to you, it can happen to me. But if I don't show up for you, no one will be there to show up for me. So it's not always, it's an investment. I always say you invest in your community and you invest in the relationships that you have, because no one ever knows when that time might arrive when you need somebody to hold you up.
Dave, you perfectly describe mutualism, which is the idea that I will help you because one day I will need your help. And that's how we come together. And I hope that catches on. And the last thing I'm going to say before I go to David is Johnny mentioned about how people say, I just want to run somebody over in a protest. Well, actually in Florida, I forgot if they made it legal or not. I think they made it legal.
They did.
That you can
stand your ground. I think they went as far as saying it was a stand your ground law.
No, but I'm talking about
somebody over.
Literally, you can run somebody over.
Run them over.
And you can get away with it. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Go ahead. I know, Florida. Yeah, Florida. Oh, let me give a shout out to John Kemper. Much love to you in the chat. And Bryce Smith. Much love to y'all. David.
Yeah, I was talking about this with my therapist last week about like, I know that I can do something myself, but like I shouldn't have to. And I was like, I think that can be expanded collectively, where I'm like, we shouldn't have to be in this alone. We shouldn't have to feel like we're doing things by ourselves. We should have a strong social safety net. We should have class solidarity. We should understand why people are protesting. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the cause, but you understand why they're doing it. And it was like, we are all so much individual. Most of us are so much closer to being unhoused than we are to being million or billionaires. And so I was like, we should be having solidarity with the people who are protesting these things. I was at a store the other day talking with the cashier who was talking about how this job that she was doing now was her quote unquote retirement job. And I was just like, this is really frustrating to think. I'm like, you have already served, you have already given so much of your time and energy and labor. Like, why is it that we don't allow you to rest? Like, rest is productive. And then also hard pivot side note, the TSA, like talking about getting there 2 hours early, the TSA success rate is 5 to 10% when they do the tests. Like, why even have it at this? Like, it's security theater.
Yeah, no, 100%. If you go on Amtrak, if you go on the train, I remember one time I was amazed. You just walk right on.
Yes,
you walk right on the train. I'm like, wait, I don't have to like strip down to my boxes or something. Like, what's going on? And no, you could just go hop right on the train. So I was thinking, like, I'm ready to retire right now. I'm going to turn. I know Kimberly. I'm not going to throw out her age, but I was texting with her back and forth, and I'm like, I'm going to turn 40 this year in October, and I'm ready to retire like right now. You know, I'm just ready to lay back, take care of my kids, make sure they're good, relax with my wife, but let's go see the world. And it's like, nope, you got a ways to go. John Kemper said, no way, I'm making it to 70. And it's unfortunate because they raised the age of eligibility for Social Security from 62 to 67. It was a deal struck with, I believe, Ronald Reagan and the Democratic speaker of the time that I can't remember his name right now. But they, I'm sorry?
Wasn't it Newt?
No, not Newt. It was a Democratic speaker of the House.
Republican, sorry.
But yeah, they struck that deal years ago to increase the age, and it pretty much, as far as I know, I wasn't around there, went without any fanfare. So I love the fact that France is over there fighting for their retirement age. But I would even go a little bit further. I'll say, oh, you want to move it up? Let's move it down. Let's go, Dave. Let's move this thing down. And then you can think twice about even thinking about doing this again in the future and go more progressive. So let's move on. This is already 8:36, and I think I got a couple more stories to hit. Let me go to this next story. We talk about this crisis, the SVB crisis that is happening right now. Boom, share.
18. Dodd-Frank was passed, and this is 2018. Dodd-Frank was passed early in the Obama administration after the 2008 financial.
So let me preference this clip, because I think for the most part, we're all political junkies here. We're hearing about how the SVB bank is in crisis and it was going under, and then Biden had a speech talking about how they're going to try to bail it out. I know Johnny has a lot to say about this, so I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this. But what this clip is about, how we got to this point. And Dodd-Frank was a regulation that was a result of, in 2008, when we had the huge stock market crash and a lot of banks failed. It's actually a lot of progressives would say it was weak legislation, the Dodd-Frank. But even that weakness, they rolled it back under Trump in 2018, and it was with the help of 17 Democrats. It's actually 16 Democrats and one independent that caucuses with the Democrats. And no, that's not Bernie Sanders. That's Angus King. So I'm going to show their faces. But now that I preference that, I'm going to play the clip one more time. All right.
And this is 2018. Dodd-Frank was passed early in the Obama administration after the 2008 financial collapse. In 2018, they came back and revised it a bit. It raised the too big to fail threshold from 50 billion to 250 billion. Essentially, a lot of smaller and up to 250 billion. So you're talking medium-sized banks got exempted from the most stringent regulations. It exempted certain banks from stress tests. Again, the smaller and medium banks. Eliminated so-called living wills for some banks and eased some of the mortgage reporting requirements on these smaller and medium-sized banks. Again, this is a legacy. This is a reboot, if you will, after the 2008 financial crisis. It passed largely with Republican support. Republicans were pushing this, but 67 votes in the Senate, including 17 Democrats. 258 votes in the House, including 33 Democrats. So mostly Republicans, but a sizable number of Democrats. Now, the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank specifically lobbied for these reforms. This is Greg Becker. He says that bank, the one that just collapsed, didn't pose a systemic risk, and that imposing the requirements, the Dodd-Frank requirements, it put an outsized burden on us. That was his argument. Now, Barney Frank, remember, liberal congressman from Massachusetts, he was the lead House sponsor of Dodd-Frank. He introduced it with Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut. He joined the board of Signature Bank. That's the New York bank that New York had to take over the weekend in 2015. In 2018, he said, Barney Frank, who pushed the big Dodd-Frank, said the rollback does not in any way weaken the regulations. When he said that, he was on the board of Signature Bank.
So he was getting paid. That's why he said that. And he's the guy on the original bill. So if you can get, and let me take this guy off. If you can get co-opted that easy, right? Where as soon as you leave Congress, you went to a bank, you started working for a bank, and then you're advocating for deregulation. Tell me, how effective was that legislation? You know what I'm saying? To begin with. So I think that's why I believe that, I don't know all the details of it, but I've heard the criticism that Dodd-Frank was a weak bill, and I'm pretty sure that is the case. So before I go to David, I'm going to show this clip, or not clip actually. Let me play this here. This is the picture. I like showing pictures. I put out a text of all the 17 Democrats, but I was like, you know what? I took time. I took like maybe 10, 20 minutes to like compile this. It's not the most perfect picture, but I wanted to get all these guys' names and faces out there. 4 of them are gone, as you can see down here.
One of those is mine.
And one of them was yours.
Both of mine, who are still actually in office, I see you, Tim Kaine, and I see you, Mark Warner, are actually there.
Take it away, David. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah,
Dave.
go for it, Dave.
Oh, I just want to let people know, when I say that, it's not just about having a blue House or state Senate, all that type of stuff locally. It's about the shade of blue. And I think Virginia it really highlights what it's like to have a solid corporate Democrat state. And so when I look at Mark Warner and Tim Kaine being so frequently on the wrong side of everything and becoming a solidly business friendly state, meanwhile we rank towards the bottom. We used to be like number 50. We might be still there or worse when it comes to workers' rights. This is why, because they're not concerned with the plight of the everyday people. And so having a Republican governor like Glenn Youngkin now, yes, he's trying to pass some abhorrent social policy, but economically these people are not that far apart. I mean, I would barely say they're cousins once removed at this point. And it really frustrates me, because you have better examples, I think, in other states like Colorado, which David, I'm sure, can speak on, or other states where you can at least see attempts at trying to have the back of the everyday people, but they don't get the same notoriety because maybe they're considered a purple state or somewhere where it's not like, once you see that it's blue, people just gloss over it. Like, oh, everything's being handled. And it's like, no, it's not. But that's my thoughts.
Yeah, let me go to you, David.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked actually to see Michael Bennet from Colorado up there.
I know he ran for president. Remember last time? Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no, it's like I was actually talking about this at work earlier today. We've been asking a lot of people about like, how do you feel about the SVB stuff? One, the executives or the CEO who sold stock, like millions of dollars of stock, like a couple of weeks before the bank collapsed, like
a day before.
Yeah. So it's like, how is that legal? And I was like, couldn't we have like a too big to fail like light or something like of maybe like 100 billion, where like the regulations are a little different depending upon the asset class. And I'm just shocked that this is legal. But as I continue to learn in the United States, legality does not seem to equate with ethics. And I think that needs to change.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I just wanted to keep these pictures up here the whole time we were all talking, because I really want people to like remember these faces. And I want to ask the question: did anything good come from any of these senators at all? Like, has anybody seen them advocating for the working man, for the average person? I mean, I seen Michael Bennet like just talk a bunch of crap the last time he ran for president. I didn't hear any policies that excited me at all. So these are all people that I just want to see them go.
I would say this is what frustrates me so much. Because when I get in conversations with people, they'll bring up things like the Equality Act, all these things. And I always say, I don't want to discredit that on certain social policies, most Democrats will vote in a way that I agree with. But then I have to let people follow up with, that's because it doesn't challenge their power. Me being a gay male does absolutely nothing to despite what some Republicans would have you believe, it does absolutely nothing to their power structure or the things that they can do economically. The moment that I demand, hey, maybe we should legalize sex work, especially given the high probability that transgender parts of my community would be involved in that, then it's an issue, because now you're challenging something. You're talking about finances, you're talking about economic power, you're talking about autonomy. Anytime you try to connect a marginalized group to the lack of economic power that they currently have in the market, that's when they don't vote for you. And that's the reason why all of these people will so casually vote for this. It's like the Supreme Court. Most of their work is within like labor law or business law and things like that. Those get barely a fraction of what abortion and, you know, gun rights and all that stuff gets, which of course they are important issues, but they don't impact our everyday life the same way. And I think keeping their faces up here to shame them is always a great thing in my bookcase. So feel free.
100%. I know we got 15 minutes left, so we're about to do like a lightning round. All right, so here's the next clip that I want to bring up here. Unfortunately, this is going to talk about something that goes underreported for a while, which is the war in Yemen. I know that Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna has been trying to do a lot of work on this. Let's talk about it.
The worst humanitarian crisis in the world. That's how the United Nations describes the situation in Yemen. Years of conflict have decimated the country, especially its children who are dying of starvation in many cases. Nearly 3/4 of Yemen's population rely on humanitarian assistance for survival. That's nearly 22 million people. While the situation remains dire, Yemen is struggling to get the aid that it needs. The UN asked member countries to pledge more than $4 billion to the crisis in Yemen. They only got $1.2 billion. I want to bring in Thomas Sadowski. He is an actor and activist and the founding ambassador for War Child USA. Thomas, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us and calling attention to this. You wrote this opinion piece on CNN.com, Too Hungry to Weep, the tragedy of Yemen's starving children. And we're just not paying enough attention to this issue. You're absolutely right about this. You recently got back from Yemen. Tell us what you saw there.
Well, thank you, first of all, for taking the time. It's a situation that far too few people know about, and I'm a firm believer in the decency of the American people, and I truly believe that if people really knew what was happening over there, the action on it would be swift and significant. What it's like on the ground is almost impossible to describe. There is something that really hits in the deepest part of you when you are in the presence of children who are starving to death. I'm a father myself, but I think just as a human being, there is something really primitive that gets woken up in you, this need to protect and this need to care and this need to do something. And the unfortunate reality on the ground in Yemen is that that suffering is everywhere. It just seeps through every interaction that you have with every person. You can see it in the faces of everyone that you come across, and you can see it strewn all about you on the streets. It's an extraordinarily brutal and difficult thing to see in practice.
Yeah, and we're showing our viewers some of your video and pictures when you visited schools in Yemen. These children are absolutely beautiful, and to think about how they're suffering, it's just it's unimaginably painful. I'm sure to see it on your side of things when you go and visit. Tell us about that experience.
All right, since for time, I just want to keep it moving, but I definitely wanted to highlight this clip. And as a parent myself, I have a little boy and a little girl, 10 and 12 years old. Just looking at those pictures is absolutely heartbreaking. And it's like where I live, I can't even fathom what these people are going through. It must be like The Walking Dead. It must be like, The Last of Us, where they're just scrounging for whatever resources that they can get. And to just think that that's going on somewhere in this world, even with Ukraine and Russia, to imagine just being in a city where you're living your regular life and then all of a sudden you're getting bombs and you're seeing the house that you grew across from for years just blown up is just a horrible way. I think we just have to find a way to abolish war and realize that when there is war, that's a failure of our leaders and diplomacy. And when we do have war, they should automatically maybe be taken out of office or some way of punishing them. But let me go to David.
Yeah, just really quickly. I believe that they said at the beginning of the clip that they were needing $4 billion. And I was like, the U.S. Department of Defense budget for fiscal year 2023 is increasing to $797 billion. So I just did some quick math. That is half of 1% of the Defense Department budget. And so I was like, the fact that we always, you're exactly right, that we always have money for war, but we don't have money for food, peace. It's, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely why I heard about the Department of Peace. I've heard Dennis Kucinich talk about the Department of Peace. I heard Marianne Williamson as of recently talk about that. I would like to learn more about it, just as a general premise. Maybe if we could replace our Department of Defense with a Department of Peace, I'll be more than happy to explore what that would look like. But let me go on to the next topic that we're going to talk about is wage inflation.
What we've seen is that clearly hiring is still going on, but perhaps that wage pressure is starting to cool off. Maybe they're not having to juice up, offer so much to get people in the door anymore. What are you seeing?
Well, the key factor in this report was labor force participation. Labor force participation picked up. More Americans are actively looking for work, and that means that employers are filling jobs more easily and without having to resort to inflationary wage growth. In fact, in this report, on a three-month annualized basis, wage growth fell from 4.4% to 3.6%. That's almost where the Fed needs it to be. They want wage growth of around 3.5, 3.6%. That would be 2% for inflation plus 1.5% around about for productivity growth, which is what we're seeing. And here we are, not too far away. So I think this is a very encouraging report.
Let me go to Dave first, and then I'm going to go to you, Johnny.
She was about to foam at the mouth,
right,
with excitement,
right?
The fact that, oh my gosh, we can put these people, we can oppress the people again. And I just want to acknowledge how they spoke about this versus how when she was talking about how people were like demanding better. And when we say better, like, I love that we never discuss what that means. It's like, I want to be able to take off if I'm sick and not get my coworkers sick and get paid. Oh, I would actually like to be able to pay my bills, because that's what the point of working 40 hours is normally for people. It's not just for charity. And I don't know, stuff like this, it just amazes me, because the mask has been off for the past few years. And I think for once, I'm starting to see solidarity. And I'm excited to hear what Johnny has to say, because, you know, you work in the weeds of this. But I feel energy-wise that people, they're not just waking up to how much they're being played and rethinking work, but now they're looking for answers. And I think as long as we have the right people with the megaphone providing accurate solutions, ones that bring us together in class solidarity, it really could be a transformational rest of this decade. But what were your thoughts?
100%. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, yeah. So, you know, wages aren't causing inflation. Let's get that clear, right? Inflation is caused by the owner class raising prices, because if you look at their bottom line, their profits have increased exponentially since the pandemic. They are not hurting. The people, the business owners, the people who own the resources that are driving the prices up, they are making money. And the workers are, you know, they got a 1%, 3% raise to shut them up. You know, and that doesn't even keep up with the inflation. And really what it's like my son works for Monarch Investments, which is a property management company. He's just a maintenance kid, you know, but once he told me who he's working for, you know, he's like, oh, they own all kinds of properties here. So then, of course, I start looking them up. I'm like, my kid's working for one of these giants, you know. I mean, he needs a job. What is he gonna do? But I go find the video of the guy, Bill, that owns the place. And, you know, he's a big CEO. It's like $100 million, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equity. And they buy apartment buildings all over the place and slum them down and then, you know, raise the rent. And he's talking about during the pandemic how once the moratoriums are lifted, it's going to be like popping the clutch, because he's a motorcycle guy. It's going to be like popping the clutch on the economy, where they can raise the rates, raise the prices, blah, 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 blah. In the meantime, these same people, this dude is probably, I don't see him out there advocating for higher wages or giving my son a raise. So they want people to pay their rent, but they don't want those workers to be able to get paid enough to pay their rent.
Exactly.
Say what? And so this idea that wages drive inflation is bullshit. When we see, I'm sorry, but it's bull. When we see that the profits are still increasing, and then you have this mind game that they played with the working class, right, through the media. They said nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work.
Yep.
We've got the lowest unemployment ever in history. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. We've got, oh my God, there's too many people working. Inflation is through the roof. We have to lay people off. You hear Jerome Powell saying we need, if unemployment rates keep sticking at this low level, we're going to have to keep raising rates, which doesn't do anything to fight inflation, by the way, audience. And as a result, more businesses are going to be forced to lay people off because of interest rate. That's how it combats inflation, is it causes these businesses to fight for their profit margin. And the first thing to always go is jobs.
Yeah, of course. It's a sick byproduct of capitalism. That's all it is, where they want to make as much money as they can. And God forbid that they have to raise the wages of people. You know, I'm so happy that Workers Strike Back, which is a new organization formed by Shama Shawant over there in Seattle, that they're building up this new organization. They're the ones that put $15 an hour on the map. They're now advocating for $25 an hour. Good. And that's great that they're advocating for that. I hope it catches on, and definitely I'm hoping that we can get some change with that situation. Let me see. Let me go to.
Because I just want to say, it's funny you say that, because back in 17, 18, when they were fighting for 15, I said, by the time we get $15, I've got a tweet saved somewhere. By the time we get, I said, by the time we get $15 an hour, people are going to need $25 an hour because they already need 20.
Yep.
That was back in 17 or 18.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. No, 100%. Go ahead, Dave.
Now we're at 35.
I know, right?
But no, I was going to say, I love that you brought that up, Johnny, that none of us want to work. And you know what? David and I stand on, this is the hill I will die on. You're right. None of us want to work, to do meaningless and pointless work for 40 hours a week when it could be automated away. And as a society, we could collectively enjoy the fruits of our labor, and the fact that we've set up a system where people can be passionate and actually live out the best aspects of our life. But that's not what people want, who get profit from the fact that we are miserable and depressed.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like when they started rolling out kiosks at McDonald's, do you think, oh, we don't need as many workers as before, so let's bring down the prices of the Big Mac from $6 a Big Mac to maybe $3? Did they make that change? No. Not one bit. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I call it performing capitalism, is like as work. And so I'm like, I don't really want to perform capitalism, and I don't think most people want to perform capitalism. However, I think that like if we weren't out here performing capitalism, we're social beings. We would want to be in community with one another. We want purpose. So I was like, even if we weren't working, performing capitalism, I think that we would still be quote unquote productive, even though that's a capitalist myth too. But I was like, I think that we would still be out gardening, like doing community service.
Yeah. And just being in more community with each other. You know, right now we're in a culture where you see people walking around, and kids, instead of saying, hey, how you doing? Did you see that game? They'll be on the phone right next to each other, and they might text each other like, hey, you see that Knicks game? And, you know, instead of directly talking to each other. But it is absolutely crazy. So with the last minute, I wanted to play this. I had 2 clips on the Willow Project, but I think this one clip explains it a lot better. So let me play this one.
Project would tap as much as $600 million.
Start it over.
In our Earth Matters series, the Biden administration is expected to make a decision soon on whether to approve a controversial oil drilling project in Alaska. And while there has been bipartisan support from the state's lawmakers and some native groups for the Willow Project, there is also a tremendous amount of pushback from climate activists in Alaska and beyond. Here's CNN's Renee Marsh.
At this point, the only way that this project can be stopped is if...
On TikTok and Instagram, calls for President Biden to stop Willow Project, an urgent call that's gone viral to block a controversial Alaska oil drilling project.
Please help stop Willow.
The videos racking up tens of millions of views, spurring more than 1 million letters to the White House and more than 3 million signatures to a Change.org petition.
In order to stop Willow, people need to know about Willow.
20-year-old Elise Joshi, a senior at the University of California, Berkeley, is one of the social media activists.
Will not just impact Alaska, it will not just impact this country, it'll impact the world. But the amount of carbon emissions that it will emit, we will see an increase in frequency and intensity of natural disasters.
ConocoPhillips' Willow Project would be located in northwest Alaska on the National Petroleum Reserve, federal land roughly the size of Indiana. The project would tap as much as 600 million barrels of oil, but it would take years for it to make it to market. It's messy politics for President Biden, pitting his climate promises against the desire to produce energy at home and lower gas prices.
All right, so I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I think we got the gist of it. And the other video that I was going to play is just basically saying that he is going, the rumor is, or the administration is signaling that he is going to go forward, breaking his campaign promise and going forward with this Willow Project. Let me go to you, Dave, first.
First and foremost, you know, I am an advocate for the primary and Marianne primarying Joe Biden. So first of all, Marianne put that heel on his neck. Don't let him breathe about this decision, because everyone should hear how important it is. But what I wanted to say substantively is that given the economic deprivation of the Native community, especially in that region, I can't say that I don't understand the impulse, given they see that maybe as their only option, because of course people know oil can be a cash cow. However, what I would like to propose is that this not their only option. As a government, as a federal government that has the option to print money or resources to invest in communities, they could make this community whole, but they're making it seem like it's this either or, like, oh, either they do this or they just have to be poor. And it's like, no, you could do the right thing by these people and invest in that community so that these people recognize, I can't ask somebody to care about if I'm hungry if they're starving. And so that's how I look at it with this climate situation. Yes, they don't want their kids to die from climate pollution and all of the things like that. But right now they're just trying to get to tomorrow. And I really hate that it's been presented as this either or binary.
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I think what is really interesting to me is that how much of the resistance against the Willow Project has taken off on TikTok. And I can't help but think that the desire to also want to ban TikTok or any sort of dissent from young people who are primarily using the TikTok app is somewhat related. Maybe that's just the conspiracy theorist in me, but
yeah,
I don't know. It seems coincidental.
Very interesting. I'm not surprised that Biden is breaking a promise. I'm not surprised that another thing is that we don't have time to show it. His new budget is showing a lot of progressive things like raising taxes on the rich, a lot of different things. But guess what? Even the commentators on the TV show knew that, oh, this is never going to pass. See, he waited till he had that Republican buffer so that it wouldn't go through the Republican House to now say, oh, I got all these progressive policies that I want to do. It's just, him and his administration are very good at signaling that they're progressive when they're in actuality, which we're about to see when he doesn't veto that bill that in DC, they have that new crime bill to try to lessen the laws and from it being so draconian as far as like the amount of years that you would do for simple petty theft. He is not going to veto it because, of course, he's what they call him, Crime Bill Biden. Crime Bill Biden. Let me give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Bryce Smith, Cheryl Patrick. Bryce Smith. Thank you for, it was Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was the speaker that made the deal with Ronald Reagan to raise the age. That's right. And then who else we got? Bruce Jackson, Gamer for Life. Much love to you. PJ Holly, John Kemper. Much love to you and everybody. The love always. Thank you all for coming through the Jamon. 93. Thank you all for coming through. I want to thank our guest, Johnny. And I enjoyed Johnny. I don't know about David and Dave. I appreciate you. Would you want to come on some more? I got to put you on the PJ list.
Just hit me up, man. Hit me
Definitely. Up. All right. Much love to you. Any last words? Let me go around the horn. David.
Thanks for having me back, as always. At Call Me Limbo Pod, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, Cash App, Venmo. We have a few episodes out you can listen to. Apple Podcast, Spotify, really wherever you do.
Nice day.
Oh, great to meet you, Johnny. Always fun with everyone else. Status quo Joe still got to go, so make sure y'all vote in the primary for whoever. But yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, Joe got to go. Screw Google. Much love to you also. Let me give you a shout out real quick. Johnny, last words.
Hey man, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm down for talking about anything like this. And if anybody needs any help getting their stuff together, organizing stuff, doing the nuts and bolts, hit me up, man. Just look my name up. I'm like the only one online. So
all right. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. We appreciate you. Get out there. We're about being productive leftists. Do something. Find what you want to do, whatever it is, whether it's in electoral politics or outside with ballot initiatives, whatever it is, or just talking to your neighbor. Let's build this community. Mutualism forever. Much love to y'all. Adios.